Hi, this is Scott Gietler from Bluewater Photo, and today we are going to talk about the new housing from Fantasea for the Sony A6300 and A6500 cameras. The thing that's really exciting about this housing is this is Fantasea's first housing in a long time for a higher end camera, for a really nice mirrorless camera. Previously they have been doing great work on their RX100 housings, on their G16, their G7X Mark II housings, but this really is a whole new level of housing for them, and I'm going to go into why this is different from their smaller, much less expensive compact housings, and why this is a nice housing for Sony's high-end mirrorless camera. Now, before I start, because I know a lot of people are going to ask, I'm going to quickly compare it to some of the other A6300, A6500 housings out there. So if you're looking for a higher end choice, the best choice in a Sony A6300, A6500, I have two aluminum housings here. This is the Aquatica Sony A6500 housing, and this is the Nauticam A6300 housing, both of which will be reviewed separately. But if you're looking to save some money and you don't necessarily need a large number of lens choices and port support, then the Fantasea A63-6500 housing is a great choice. Now, between those, we have two options, the Fantasea housing and the Icolite housing. We'll say that measuring them, they're both around the same size. The Icolite housing has a little more depth, and it weighs about a pound more, 2 pounds versus 3 pounds. So it is a slightly larger housing, slightly heavier, but overall, compared to a DSLR, they are both smaller housings, easily manageable in your hand. I would say the biggest difference between the housings is the lens support. The Fantasea right now out of the box supports the 16-50 lens, and it will be supporting 16mm prime, the 10-18, fisheye conversion, 50mm macro, where the Icolite has support for a lot more lenses. It has support for the 90mm macro. It has support for larger 8mm domes for over-unders. So the price point's about the same. The size difference isn't huge. Fantasea has a slight edge on the weight, and some of the ergonomics are a lot nicer. But if you need support for the esoteric lenses or the 90mm macro, for now you may want to go with the Icolite if you're looking to get one of the polycarbonate housings. Okay, that said, moving on to the Fantasea housing. I really like this housing a lot. Just because the ergonomics are so nice and it's so easy to use. Let me start with the port system. Oh, I forgot one more. Important difference between this and the Icolite housing is the most common lens people are going to use is a 16-50mm kit lens. And with Fantasea, it's a small flat dome. And with Icolite, the only option is a larger dome port for that lens. So for a lot of people, if you're looking for a polycarbonate housing and you want a small lens, you want a flat port, you want to do some macro with a 16-50, you'll probably want to go for the Fantasea. If you want to use a dome port, you want to have your 16-50 be wider, maybe you're going to use it just for video instead of macro, then you might want to look at the Icolite. So Fantasea has a really nice bayonet system. It's really easy to put the port on. You just push it in, turn it 1 inch, it's locked. Has a nice little port lock here. Click, it's locked, and your port is on. Can open up the housing. Fantasea housing has a double O-ring system, making it very, very watertight. There's a really nice camera tray that locks in really well, making it very easy and secure to put the camera in the housing, close it up, and you're good to go. So there's a port option for the 16-50 lens. They're going to be supporting the 16mm prime with the conversion lenses, the 10-18 wide angle, the 30 and 50mm macro lenses. And I don't think they're going to support the 90mm macro, but I have a request out to them to find out, and I will update the review if that changes. Now, this housing has a lot of features that normally are not on most of their smaller polycarbonate housings. First of all, this housing's depth rated to 200 feet. All the controls are really nicely labeled, so it's very easy to see what every control does. By the way, it has buttons for all the functionality on the camera itself, which is really nice. I mentioned the double O-ring. The housing includes a leak detector, so you'll have a little red light go on if you get enough of water inside the housing, which hopefully will not happen. It supports fiber optic cables, of course. It has a cold shoe mount, so you can mount a video light, focus light, GoPro, whatever you want. And Fantasea, last but not least, it has a M16 bulkhead here, so you can use that for electronic sync cord, for a vacuum check, for HDMI. So it's really nice to see this M16 bulkhead in a less expensive polycarbonate housing. Fantasea says that they will be releasing some exciting accessories for this housing sometime over the summer, including a shutter extension. So if you're using a tray with handles, you can press the shutter from here. They're going to support an LCD screen magnifier that is for people with not great eyesight. You can magnify the LCD. They say that they're going to support a flash trigger, so instead of having to wait for the internal flash to recycle, which can be a pain, with Sony cameras, the flash trigger will allow you to shoot very quickly without having to use an electronic sync cord. They're going to support, I mentioned, coming soon is the dome port for the 16mm and the 10 to 18mm lenses. And they are also going to have a quick release system for their accessory lenses. Now, I will say that this is a 67mm threaded port, and there's a variety of macro lenses and wide angle lenses that work great with this camera, including the Bluewater +7 macro lens, the Nauticam compact macro lens, the CMC, and a number of wide angle lenses like the AOI wide angle lens and the Nauticam super wide angle lens all work great with this setup. So we're looking at about a cost of, I'd say, $1,350 US for the camera, zoom, and this port, which is about similar to the Icolite and about $900 less than a comparable, say, Nauticam or Aquatica system. So I think the price is right. I think the functionality is really nice. So if you're looking for a very full-featured housing and you know you're only going to be using a couple of the most popular lenses and you want to save some money to buy some strobes or some lights, then I think this housing is a great choice. We will be stocking everything you need for this housing. So any questions, contact us at sales@bluewaterphotostore.com, and thanks for watching the video.